You know, the logistics industry, it's a beast, right? It's just massive, it's messy, and honestly, it's what makes our modern world tick. But if you're a company in that world, how do you do more than just survive all that chaos? How do you actually grow? Well, that's what we're going to tackle today. Let's dive in and find a clear path forward.
All right, here's our game plan. We're going to start by looking at just how big this juggernaut of an industry is. Then we'll dive right into the daily chaos. After that, we'll talk about your digital lifeline, keywords. Then we'll move beyond the data to telling your story. And finally, we'll wrap up with a marketing blueprint for 2026.
Okay, Section 1, the $800 billion juggernaut. And I mean, to really get a handle on the challenge here, you first have to appreciate the sheer scale of this thing. It's honestly kind of mind-boggling how big it is.
Just look at that number. Seriously, let that sink in. We're talking almost $800 billion. That's what the U.S. logistics market is projected to be worth by 2033. So yeah, the stakes are incredibly high, but man, so is the opportunity.
And this isn't some flat, static industry either. Nope, it's growing at a compound annual rate of 6.5%. What's driving all this? Well, you've got the relentless expansion of e-commerce, we all know about that, plus more trade and all sorts of new tech being adopted. It's basically a freight train of growth, and it is not slowing down anytime soon.
All right, Section 2, a day in the chaos. So we've had that big 30,000-foot view. Now let's come right down to the ground level. What's it actually like for the people managing all the moving parts behind those huge numbers? Well, let me tell you, it's pure organized chaos.
Okay, so picture this. It's the start of your day, and your driver is at a port, all set to pick up a container. The problem? So are hundreds of other drivers. You've got massive volume, not enough workers, and so your driver can end up waiting for hours just to get one single container. I mean, that's a huge, costly delay, and the day has barely even started.
And hey, even if you finally get past the port congestion, you immediately hit the next wall, driver shortages. There just are not enough drivers to keep up with all the freight that needs to move, and this creates a huge capacity crunch. Finding a carrier, it's not just about getting a good price anymore. It's about finding one that's available at all, period.
So what happens when demand is high and capacity is low? You guessed it, prices go through the roof. And here's a perfect real-world example of that. A 40-foot container from China used to cost maybe $3,500. Now, it can be over $8,000. Just think about having to be the person to break that news to management who's watching every single penny.
And really, this quote from logistics manager Steve Hurwitz, it just sums it all up perfectly. We do more before noon than most people do in a week. It's a constant juggling act, just nonstop problem solving under insane pressure. I mean, all those roadblocks we just talked about, that's what a logistics manager might have to deal with before they've even finished their first cup of coffee.
Okay, Section 3, keywords, your digital lifeline. So we've established the operational side is a daily battle, right? But in this crazy, chaotic environment, how do you actually get new business? Well, the answer is all about cutting through the digital noise. It's about finding your digital lifeline.
So where do potential clients go when they need help? Straight to Google, of course. And that's exactly why understanding keywords is so critical. You've got two main types. On one side, you have seed keywords. Think of these as the big, broad ideas like logistics companies. They get tons of searches. But on the other side, you have long-tail keywords. These are way more specific, like cold chain logistics services. Yeah, the search volume is lower, but here's the key. The person searching knows exactly what they want, and that makes them way more likely to become a client.
Let's put some real numbers to this. Take a seed keyword like logistics services. It gets almost 10,000 searches a month. Huge volume. But now look at a long tail one, like last mile logistics solutions. Fewer searches for sure, but you can bet the person typing that has a very specific, probably urgent problem. And then you have these commercial keywords like freight forwarding services. The cost per click, that's the price you pay for an ad click, is higher. Why? Because that searcher is ready to buy. So the takeaway here is you've got to choose the right keywords to attract the right kind of customer.
So why are we hammering on this so much? Well, just look at this chart. This is huge. In the supply chain industry, a whopping 44.1% of all global website traffic comes from organic search. That's almost half. Think about what that means. If you're not showing up on search engines, you're basically invisible to almost half of your potential market. It's that simple.
All right, Section 4, Beyond Data, Telling Your Story. So look, getting found online, that's step one. That's crucial. But once a potential client does find you, how do you convince them that you're the one who can solve their big, chaotic problems? Well, that takes more than just data and keywords. It takes a really good story.
Now, this is a really fascinating idea that comes from psychology. It's all about how we frame a problem. The metaphor we use to describe something actually shapes how we try to solve it. Remember how at the very beginning I called logistics a beast? Well, if you see it as a beast, your whole strategy becomes about taming it or hunting it. The story you tell literally shapes the solution you offer. So your company's story has to frame your client's problem in a way that makes your solution feel like the only logical answer.
So how do you actually build that story? It's actually a pretty simple 4-step process. First, you've got to hook them, and you've got to do it fast. You only have a few seconds. Second, create a character people can relate to. You know, someone like Sheila in marketing who's struggling to get a report. Third, build a clear storyline around that character and their problem. And finally, number 4, be concise. Just get to the point. Make your message stick.
Okay, let's move to our final section, the 2026 Marketing Blueprint. We've talked about the chaos on the ground and the strategy to cut through it. Now let's zoom out one last time and really look at the data. What does a winning marketing strategy actually look like in this industry when you break it down by the numbers?
So this table here, this is basically our blueprint for 2026. And a couple out. First, look at desktop traffic. It still dominates at almost 70%. That tells you people are doing serious research on their big screens, not just scrolling on their phones. And then check out LinkedIn. The engagement rate is really solid, which just proves that's where the decision makers are hanging out. It all points to this unique, high-value, low-volume digital profile for the logistics industry.
And this is why every single client you get is so incredibly important. Get this, a 92% average annual customer retention rate. I mean, that is just incredibly high. It means that once you solve a client's logistics nightmare, they stick with you for a long, long time. And that makes all that effort to win them over in the first place totally worth it.
Which brings us to our final critical number, about $115. That's the average cost per acquisition, or CPA, from search ads, what it costs to get one new client. Now, in some industries, $115 might seem kind of steep, but in logistics, when a single contract could be worth tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we just saw that clients stick around for years, well, suddenly $115 doesn't look like an expense. It looks like a ridiculously good investment in long-term growth.
So, we'll leave you with this question to think about. We know this world is in constant motion. It's never going to stop being chaotic. The real question is your story moving your business forward? In the middle of all that chaos, you have to make sure your strategy, your keywords, and your story aren't just treading water, but are actually pushing your business.
Stop to think about how your phone or even your morning coffee actually got to you? It's all part of this gigantic, invisible network, the supply chain. But that very network, which is basically the lifeblood of our global economy, is under some serious pressure. So let's dive into this global squeeze and see how the world's fighting back to keep everything moving. I mean, just look at the sheer scale of this operation. We're talking about a worldwide system of ports, ships, trucks, and warehouses, all supposed to be working together perfectly. It's an unbelievable feat of coordination, right? But the problem is, when just one little piece of that puzzle gets disrupted, the entire system feels it. And lately, those shocks have been, well, they've been relentless. And this quote from Mark Baza, man, it just nails it. You know that feeling when your package is delayed again, or when you go to the store and the shelf is empty? That's the dissatisfaction he's talking about. It's the real-world result of a system that's just been stretched to its absolute breaking point. So what's causing all this chaos? Well, it's pretty much a perfect storm of factors. You've got geopolitical conflicts like the war in Ukraine and major shipping disruptions in the Red Sea, forcing cargo on these longer, way more expensive journeys. Then you have climate change doing its thing. A historic drought has created a massive traffic jam at the Panama Canal. And when you throw in port slowdowns and skyrocketing inflation on top of all that, you've got a recipe for global gridlock. And the stakes? They couldn't be higher. This number, this is the projected size of the U.S. logistics market by 2033. We're talking nearly $800 billion.
So solving these crazy supply chain problems isn't just about making sure your package arrives on time. It's about a massive, critical piece of our entire economy. So this brings us to the big question, right? If the old ways of doing things are breaking down under all this pressure, what's next? How are companies supposed to adapt and, build some resilience when the world is just nonstop uncertainty? For a whole lot of businesses, the answer is partnership. Specifically, they're turning to specialists called third-party logistics providers, or 3PLs for short. You can think of them as the expert navigators for this incredibly stormy sea of supply chain disruption. So, what exactly is a 3PL? Well, think of it this way. Instead of a company trying to juggle its own warehouses, its own fleet of trucks, and all the headaches of international shipping, they just hire a team of pros to handle all of it. They're basically outsourcing the entire logistical nightmare so they can focus on what they actually do best. And the results of these partnerships, they're pretty incredible. What's amazing here is that basically everyone agrees it's working. Almost 90% of shippers, that's the companies hiring these experts, call the relationship a success. And the 3PLs themselves, they're even more confident. In a world full of disruption and dissatisfaction, this kind of success really, really stands out. And this isn't just a feeling people have. The numbers show a huge strategic shift is underway. A staggering 87% of companies actually increased their use of outsourced logistics last year. That's a 25% jump from the year before. This isn't just some trend. It's a fundamental change in how businesses operate. And if we dig a little deeper into the data, we see exactly how these partnerships are paying off. A huge 82% of companies say 3PLs improve their customer service, and 68% say they bring new, innovative ideas to the table. So the key takeaway here is it's not just about saving a buck. It's about getting better, smarter, and way more reliable.
Okay, but how are these 3PLs pulling it all off? Especially now, with all the chaos? Well, the answer, more and more, is technology. It's the digital brain behind the physical brawn of all those trucks and warehouses.
And just look at this leap. It's incredible. Shipper satisfaction with their logistics partners' tech, it didn't just go up, it nearly doubled in a single year. It skyrocketed from 49% all the way up to 87%. That tells you these 3PLs have been investing a ton of money in tech, and it is paying off, big time. So what's the one piece of tech that shippers want more than anything else? It's something called control tower visibility. Just imagine it, being able to see every single part of your supply chain, from the factory floor to the customer's front door, all in real time, on one single screen. It's kind of the holy grail of logistics, and now 68% of companies see it as an absolute must-have. But here's where it gets really interesting. Even with that huge jump in satisfaction, there's still a gap between what companies need and what 3PLs are actually delivering. While 68% of shippers are demanding that control tower view, only 55% of 3PLs are providing it. It just goes to show how incredibly difficult these complex, data-heavy systems are to build and implement. This tech gap is exactly where the next big wave of innovation is going to happen. All right, so looking ahead, there are two really powerful forces that are reshaping, well, everything. We're talking about artificial intelligence and the explosion of direct consumer sales. And these aren't just buzzwords. They are fundamentally rewriting the rulebook for logistics. And with AI, we see another one of these fascinating little disconnects. A third of shippers want to use AI for demand forecasting, to predict what customers are going to want before they even know they want it. But you see that fewer 3PLs are making that a priority. It shows this subtle but really important difference. Shippers want AI to see into the future, while 3PLs are focused on using it to perfect the present. At the same time, you've got the rise of D2C. That's where brands sell directly to you online, cutting out the middleman. This is a total game changer. That direct connection means our expectations for speed and flexibility have just gone through the roof, putting this immense pressure on the entire supply chain to get faster and more agile. And how fast are we talking? Well, this chart says it all. Almost half of all shippers say their customers now expect delivery in less than 2 days. Yeah, the era of waiting around for a week for your online order to show up, that's officially over. But here's what's truly fascinating. This whole direct-to-consumer revolution isn't just about speed. It's also about connecting directly to a customer's values. For almost half of all shippers, the number one D2C priority isn't faster delivery, it's showing a real brand commitment to sustainability. So we, as consumers, now expect both, the convenience of 2-day shipping and the conscience of knowing it was done in a greener way. So, with all these pressures, disruption, technology, speed, and sustainability, where is the actual physical map of logistics heading? Let's take a look at the next big shifts that are already on the horizon. One of the biggest reactions to all this global uncertainty is a strategy called nearshoring. It's a simple idea. Move your manufacturing and your suppliers out of faraway countries and bring them closer to home. And it's not some niche concept. A massive 76% of companies are looking into it. Of course, that's creating huge demand for warehouses here, which is driving record rent growth and creating a bigger need for labor to run all these new facilities. These two images, side by side, they really capture that whole shift perfectly. On one hand, you have the massive, mind-boggling scale of global shipping, and on the other, you have the growing importance of that local warehouse and the final mile delivery truck. The future really is a balancing act between global reach and local precision. Which really leaves us with this final question. As we try to navigate this new era of logistics, what's going to be the winning strategy? Is it going to be the smartest technology, the absolute fastest delivery, or is it going to be the simple resilience that comes from being closer to home? The truth is, the answer is probably all of the above, woven together in this complex, always changing network that gets things from there.
Have you ever clicked buy now and just wondered how it all works? You know, how that thing you just bought gets from some warehouse halfway across the world all the way to your front door. Well, you've just kicked off a massive, incredibly complex, and mostly invisible machine. That machine is modern logistics, and it is the hidden engine that powers our entire world. Okay, let's get into it. So behind every single package on your doorstep, every carton of milk at the grocery store, there's a scene just like this. It's a massive, sprawling network that is working around the clock. It's this beautiful, complex dance of timing, technology, and just sheer scale, all designed to make something incredibly difficult feel totally effortless to you and me.
And just how big is this invisible engine we're talking about? Well, get this. In the US alone, the logistics market was valued at a jaw-dropping $455.4 billion in 2024. That's not just a big number, it's a colossal piece of our entire economy.
But here's where the story really gets interesting, because this incredibly powerful, super expensive, and absolutely essential system, it's getting squeezed. It's facing this kind of perfect storm of new challenges that are forcing it to change faster than ever before. So we've got this huge, mostly unseen force that's a backbone of the economy. But as we're seeing, it's also a force that's facing a whole new world of challenges.
All right, let's turn up the heat a little and look at exactly what's putting the entire supply chain inside this, well, pressure cooker. On one side, you've got us, the consumers. Our appetite for online shopping has just exploded, and with it, this expectation that we can get things almost instantly. But on the other side, the system itself is straining. We're talking chronic driver shortages, a crazy web of regulations, and, of course, global disruptions that can stop the flow of goods in a heartbeat. And check this out. This is where you can really see how our expectations have totally changed the game. A majority, 53% of us, now expect our stuff to show up in less than 2 days. What used to be a premium, special service is now just the baseline. And that puts an unbelievable amount of pressure on every single link in that chain.
And, this brings up the fundamental question, right? This incredible speed isn't magic. It's not free. It means more warehouses, more trucks, more tech, more people working 24/7. So if we're the ones demanding it, who's actually picking up the tab for all of it?
Well, for a ton of companies, the answer to handling all that pressure and complexity is pretty simple. Don't do it yourself. Instead, they're turning to specialized partners, and that decision has completely reshaped the entire industry.
They're turning to what are called third-party logistics providers, or 3PLs for short. The easiest way to think of a 3PL is like a logistics expert for hire. They're the ones who own the trucks, they run the warehouses, they manage all the complicated tech. And that lets other businesses focus on what they do best, actually making and selling their products.
And listen, this is not some small niche trend. Outsourcing to 3PLs is now the dominant model in the US. It accounts for over 61% of the entire market. They've gone from being just an option to being the standard way of doing business. It's pretty incredible.
And the reliance on these pros? It's only speeding up. A whopping 87% of companies said they increased their use of 3PLs just last year. I mean, that is a massive vote of confidence that these are the folks who can handle this new, high-pressure world.
And you can totally see why. I mean, look at this. Managing this global ballet of massive containers, ships, and cranes is an incredibly specialized skill. Companies turn to 3PLs because they have the experience, the scale, and maybe most importantly, the technology to make it all work.
So what's actually in that high-tech toolkit? Let's pull back the curtain and see the technology that makes all of this modern logistics even possible.
Okay, first, a little insider lingo for you. We tend to use tracking and tracing like they're the same thing, but in the world of logistics, they're actually two different things. Tracking is all about the now. Where is my package right now? It's a real-time snapshot. But tracing tells the whole story. How did it get here? What was its journey? That's the full history.
So with that in mind, it's really no surprise what businesses want from their 3PL partners. Right at the top, at 68%, is something called control tower visibility. And it's basically what it sounds like. Think of an air traffic control tower, but for packages. It's one single dashboard where you can see everything, everywhere, all at once.
But the real frontier, the honest-to-goodness game changer here, is artificial intelligence. AI is what lets the industry move from being reactive, fixing problems after they happen, to being predictive. It helps them see traffic jams, weather delays, or even big spikes in demand before they even happen.
But here's what's so fascinating. There's this gap right now between what companies are desperate for and what the logistics industry is ready to deliver. Look at this. A third of businesses are demanding AI for forecasting, but not even 20% of 3PLs are planning to offer it yet. It just goes to show you how fast the demand for smarter logistics is growing. It's outpacing the supply.
So where does all this leave us? What's the future going to look like for this invisible engine that's powering our world?
Well, for one thing, it's a field that is absolutely booming with opportunity. The government projects that jobs for logisticians are going to grow by 17% over the next decade. That is way, way faster than the average for all other jobs, and it's a huge signal of just how critical this work has become.
And I think this quote just nails it. It perfectly captures the giant leap that's happening right now. The whole industry is moving on from just being a simple service that answers, hey, where's my stuff, to being this incredibly intelligent system that can predict the future of the supply chain.
But let's bring it all back to that super important question of cost. Because all this speed, all this tech, someone has to pay for it. And this data shows that businesses are pretty hesitant to pick up the whole check. In fact, 30% are unwilling to absorb any of the extra costs to get stuff to us faster.
And that really leaves us with a final big question to think about. Our collective demand for near-instant everything has completely remade a global, multi-billion-dollar industry. But that convenience we love so much, it's not free. It has real costs in money, in energy, and people's time. So as we keep pushing to shrink delivery times from days to hours, we really have to ask ourselves, what are the hidden trade-offs, and who ultimately is going to pay the price?